Hello, CSFL. Welcome back to another CSFL podcast. As always, joined by myself, Coach Fury. We're looking into the league itself, and of course, I'm joined by none other than Josh, the Titans GM. Josh,
Hello.
hello. How's it going? You're having a pretty good season so far, 4-1.
Yeah, no, doing pretty well. Other than that, the massacre, at the hands of the Colts. So I hope you can keep this momentum going. But seems like this season, the parity of the league has really stepped up. So there's a lot of 4-1 teams. So just trying to keep up with the pack.
Yeah, it's been a really it's been a pretty crazy season so far, really. And we're going to sort of delve into some of the storylines really that are happening so far. Obviously, only being about five or six games in now. Still a lot to play for, and teams could always jostle and move around. But I don't know about you, but I think we really should start with the only team that is still unbeaten, and that is the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are 5-0. I think what I want to ask you, Josh, is we've talked about Jacksonville several times on the various podcasts over the past few seasons, and we've always discussed whether they are a title contender or not. And I think we've always come to the conclusion that they're probably just behind the likes of the Broncos and the Saints in terms of being in that upper echelon of the league. But at 5-0 now, have they finally turned the corner, and are they finally a contender for the Super Bowl this year and the championship?
I kind of would keep them in that same spot with the bit of the reservation of that week 2 win over the Chiefs looks really strong. They eked out a 13-10 win over them, and that's the one quality win of the season for them so far. But it's really early in the season, and they have a stretch that I think will definitely let us know exactly what the Jaguars are. They have back-to-back division games in week 8 and 9, the Colts and I, which the season the Colts are having, that's probably a win. But I would like to hopefully think I can get my revenge with them at home, and then they have their bye week. But right after that, they play the Broncos, and they play me again. Then they play the Ravens, and they play the Eagles, and then they play Washington, and then they play the Patriots. So that will let us know right there, because right now they beat the Raiders, they beat the Texans, they beat the Chargers, they beat the Colts. Like, those are all teams that any contending teams expected to beat. So I mean, I'm going to say they're a contender, because this is 2 seasons in a row that is looking like they're only going to lose 1 or 2 games. But I don't want to put them in that same tier as say the Broncos, who won a championship, because they've won in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing we've always talked about with the Jaguars is that on defense, they've always been ridiculously elite. They've got some great players there. The query we've always had with them in terms of what would make them move from probably being a playoff team to probably being a team that you think, yeah, okay, they could really challenge for the title this year, has been the offense. And for me, that's been the turning point this year for them, because of this man, Robert Griffin. I think he is starting to step up now. You can see, his ratings massively jumped this year so far, whilst the percentage is still slightly lower than you probably would like. But it's a guy they took in the draft a couple of years ago, starting to show signs now that offense is starting to get better and starting to put points on the board more regularly than they have done in the past.
I'm going to have to disagree with you there. His ratings pretty much stayed the same this season. He had a major regression last season, I think, because of training camp, and I think because of that, he's probably always going to kind of be right around where he is now. I mean, he's 24, so I mean, I'll take that part back, because we know that progression in this game is pretty linear, but he regressed, and you can look at his ratings progression to take a look to look at that. That being said, I do think that the GM for the Jaguars, kind of like most GMs who hold on to a quarterback for a while, is starting to get better at putting him in better positions, like, kind of figuring out what works for him. So that could be the difference for this year. But I don't think it was necessarily the player, because I mean, I think his completion percentage is down. I think his interceptions have been the biggest difference from this year for him as a player. He's not throwing nearly as many picks this year, but I don't know if that's a product of him getting better or a product of him playing the Ravens and playing the Chargers and teams that don't play defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think statistically he's improved. I would say, if you look at his quarterback racing, it's blossomed. It might be, as you said, that the GM has got a hold of an offensive style that suits him as a quarterback. The percentage is still pretty low. I'd want that higher, a lot higher, really.
Yeah.
If I'm sort of talking, if I'm comparing him to how the Saints and the Broncos managed to just always turn any quarterback into someone who's half decent. I mean, look, we'll talk about the Saints later, but my goodness me, they've got some atrocious quarterbacks and they're still winning games. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I think the one that stands out for me, as you said, is that interceptions. He's not had an interception at all this year. He's already got 9 touchdowns, which is, on par to be his best ever season. I think that, it's baby steps in terms of the team.
Well, I'm going to point at something completely different for the reason for why they're doing better this year, and that's actually the pickup of Josh Sidden, the offensive lineman. So, when I was when we talked about, when you sent me the message earlier about what we're kind of thinking about talking about on the podcast, I kind of really tried to look at the team and see what really changed, and that stuck out to me the most because if you take another peek at Robert Griffin, he went from being sacked 22 times his rookie year, 25 times last year to 1. He has only been sacked 1 time so far this season.
Yeah, that is huge. Yeah, that is huge. That is a very good point. The offensive line has got better, which is probably allowing him more opportunities to do something with the ball than just being plowed down pretty much every play.
I mean, that's just he got sacked 25 times last year, and so far in five games, 1 time. So that's the leap that the Jaguars made to me.
Okay, I can feel that. I would say it's a combination of both. If I'm saying honest, but I mean the defensive ability of the Jaguars is still there. The offense has definitely improved. It's getting better. So I mean, for me, I think they're contenders this year. If I'm honest, I think that they'll be able to play well enough defense that they've always been able to, and that offense will probably put enough points on them for them to be challenging this year. You only have to look at the Cardinals last year as an example of if you get the strategy right, you can make an upset. And at 5-0, I mean, we've talked about the teams they've beaten, but I mean, probably the big one that stands out there is the Chiefs, who that's their only game they've dropped this year. It's going to be an interesting sort of 4 or 5 games coming up for them, as you said, though. I think they're contenders. I don't know about you, but I would say that would be my early shout. As I think they've got a great shout in that American Conference this year.
No, I'm never going to say an undefeated team is not a contender. I will say that I want to see what happens when they actually hit the hard stretch of the schedule.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And I'm sure you're sitting there thinking they're not a contender because you're in that division.
No, I'm not going to go that far because I mean, the champion right now is just sitting, in the division right next to them. Is the Broncos. So that's that's the measuring stick in the conference right now.
Yeah. Okay, so perhaps if we stay with the American Conference and we just go to the American East now, because this is one that I wanted to talk to you about, and I know we've been talking off the show about this, but looking at the Patriots, they're 2-3, the Bills are 2-3, the Dolphins are 3-2, but the Jets are currently leading that division at 4-1. So, what's your makeup of this? Is it a case of just the Patriots just being absolutely atrocious, or are the other teams just starting to get closer to them in this division?
Well, I think that kind of undersells the Jets. The Jets were really, really good last year until their quarterback got injured. So, I think of them as kind of just picking up where they left off. The Patriots are an enigma. I don't know why they are having the troubles that they are, but I think that being able to I guess what's the best way to put this? Have access to a more advanced level of stats with the new game coming out might help Rizzo finally put a pin into what's going wrong with that offense, because that to me is that offense should be putting up 30 points a game. They should be putting up prime Colts level numbers because Russell Wilson's rating wise is a stud.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably worth shouting out actually for anyone who watches this podcast. If you haven't got the new game, because obviously the league is moving to the new version, go and grab it before we actually move, because you can load the league in, and you have access to all the playbook stats and all the advanced stats they've put into the new game. And I mean, we've talked about it off, but my goodness me, it really shows you what works well in your playbook and what doesn't. If you just want a quick snapshot of stuff you can get rid of and stuff you probably want to do a bit more of.
Yep, I found a play that was giving up like almost 10 yards a pop. So, that got deleted very, very quickly.
I found one I was running over 50% of the time because I thought it was a good play, and I was losing 8 yards of play on it. So, it shows how much we know about the game. I think, I don't want to go too much off on a tangent, but I mean, that's I think it's something that's really great that the developers added, and it hopefully will help the new guys who join the league, who, first time playing in a multiplayer league, first time maybe creating a playbook to maybe get closer to the likes of the Broncos and the Saints who have been playing for years. So it's great to see that. But coming back to Russell Wilson, I mean, this looks ugly when I look at his stats here. So let me just throw them out to you. So he's 55%, on his throwing. He's 4 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He's been sacked 9 times already. And his QB rating is only 67 this year. To me, that screams what we were talking about Robert Griffin earlier, where the line's not helping him. To me, that screams that New England line is not, whatever's happening there, it's not working very well for them. They're not allowing him time to actually, make the play that he needs to.
Yeah, and I think when looking at the Patriots, I really wonder if a lot of it is play selection, because he there's no reason he should have the completion percentage that Vince Young has. Like he has a lot. He's a lot more accurate, and so I think a lot of it is he's just gonna have to take a look at what plays are his best plays and cue those up a lot more. Because I mean, I don't necessarily want to pin it completely on the line because his interception percentage is still really low comparatively. I mean, like I know his touchdown to interception ratio is horrible, but he's only throwing an interception on it's like 3.5% of his passes. Like that's I think that's league average, maybe even under. So like I think it's play selection. Yeah,
and I think what is interesting here is that when you look at the 20 plus and 40 plus as well, he's not exactly stretching the play as much as I probably would have expected him to. When you look at his ratings, I mean, his arm is 84, his accuracy is 80. I would expect a bit more of a balance there, if I'm honest.
Yeah,
but Patriots are an enigma. They definitely are. But we can probably say the Jets and the Dolphins are taking full advantage of this at the moment. The Jets are 4-1. As you said, they had a good season last year until the quarterback went down, and Matt Ryan is having a sensational season so far.
Yeah, no, he is an absolutely great quarterback. I think last season he might have torched us in one of our meetings. So I expected that division to be between the Patriots and the Jets. So for me, the Dolphins are a bit of a surprise, even though I think we've all been kind of looking at them hoarding for a while and was wondering when the saturation point of just too much talent was going to finally hit, and it might have been this year.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. When you actually look at some of their wins as well, they're quite impressive for the Dolphins. So, I mean, they're 3-2, but I mean, the wins they had against the Ravens, they beat the Jets, who are currently top of the division. That's their only loss, and beat the Browns. And we know the Browns are, got a veteran GM. The Ravens have definitely kicked on a gear this year. So the only losses they've had against the Steelers and the Patriots, which you probably would have expected at the start of the season. So 3-2 already, they're in fantastic shape, having quite a difficult start to the season in the first few weeks.
Yeah. No, I think that they have a great chance to win that division and maybe even sneak ahead of some of the teams that were projected to be better, like say the Ravens. Because I mean, I don't know if we're gonna get to them on this podcast. Maybe we'll save it for another day. But man, their offense is just woo. It's if it wasn't for that defense being so good, they will probably be getting blown out of most games.
Yeah, and I think that's the natural evolution cycle of you see of GMs when they start to understand the game a bit more. I mean, I know I went through it with probably in the second season where I'd understood how the defense, I could get that working effectively, but my goodness me, I was terrible on offense, and that was the biggest issue that I had, and I think I've got a good balance of that now. But yeah, the Ravens we'll probably talk about another episode, I think, because I just want to see how the next couple of games go for them before we make an assumption on them. But I mean, coming back to the American East, I mean, you got the Jets, the Dolphins, Bills are 2-3 as well. That's props to them. I mean, they've, considering they're having to use a coach playbook, the AI playbook, they're doing okay with what they've got as well. I mean, how do you see this playing out? Do you think, you said you probably see the Dolphins maybe taking the division at this stage, but do you think?
I said the Jets. I think the Jets are going to win this division.
Okay, and do you think the Pats will make the playoffs still?
I don't know. I'm at this point, I'm leaning towards no, and it's not because I don't think they have the talent. It's I'm looking at the schedules and I'm wondering if some of the teams that are ahead of them have already played some of the rougher patches of their schedule, even though we're only 5 games in, and the Patriots have already lost some games that were just shockers. So when they get to their divisional stretch, I don't think they've had a season yet where they've won both against the Dolphins. They usually give up 1 or 2 to their division, so they could be looking at a 5-loss team. And I just don't think that gets you in the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, let me throw this at you. This isn't way too early.
Oh yeah, way too early.
Way too early thought. Way too early thought. But here's what would be, and just be really interesting to see if this happens. So the Patriots don't make the playoffs. They then go into the draft with the lottery and take the number 1 pick again, which means they'll have had 3 number 1 picks in 4 years. How crazy would that be? They pick up Aaron Donald, or I don't know, I can't remember who the other guys are in this draft actually, but Aaron Donald's the one I can remember. They pick him up as well, and then we're sitting here going, "Oh my goodness me!" Who knows? Who knows?
It's the same. I think you would just eventually reach a point where the team is so talented that just like the game just you win.
Like the Dolphins.
Yeah,
like the Dolphins.
Yeah. And I think that's true. Like you can reach I call it the saturation point where you're just like your team is so talented at so many different positions that you're just going to out talent some teams. And when you play the GMs like the Packers or the Saints or the Browns or the Broncos, when you play those guys who know how to work the margins in addition to having their talent, you're going to lose to them. But the other 20 GMs, that are, have teams that are of, average talent, you're going to out talent them. That's just kind of how I look at it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's really interesting though, because when you look at, so if I just give you 2 other teams quickly. So when you look at the Dallas Cowboys are a team I thought this year would have far too much talent to just be 1-4 at this stage. But then I look at the injuries they've had. They've had some atrocious injuries. So, you've got Peppers out, Romo out, McRae, Giroud, and Ratliff. These are all starters for them pretty much. And some, 2 of them are, one of them's out probably for the season. 2 of them are out for at least three or so weeks, because we know 1 to 2 weeks. It's never 1 to 2 weeks in this game. And then you've got 2 guys who can play, but probably won't play as effectively because of these different injuries they've got. But that team, I thought, would just have way too much talent to be 1-4. I don't know about you, but
and it goes both ways. Is just to show that sometimes we have absolutely no idea what we're talking about. Go and look at Kansas City. Go and look at Kansas City, and look at they are another team that's I think is incredibly talented, but they have like 15 injured players, and they're still and they're managing to win. So what do we know?
We'll come back to Kansas later, because there's one player that I think deserves a bit of recognition now. As much as the rest of the league will be sighing, I'm sure the Kansas GM will be finally accepting with that one. But we'll come back to that, because I want to talk about a player in particular. But if we move back over to the national conference, and we have to talk about one particular result that happened today on the sim. And that is that it's nice to know that some of these veteran GMs are actually human. I don't know about you, but it's nice to see them. This can happen in this game. But props to Kyrus and the Carolina Panthers for pretty much demolishing the New Orleans Saints at this stage. Interesting now how that division is going to play out.
Yeah, that was just a take them out behind the woodshed and beat them up. That was they just got bullied. That was a pretty surprising win, and it was funny because he'd been mentioning that maybe there was a quarterback controversy brewing, but Cam Newton came back and knocked off so far what has been the cream of the crop for the league. So good for them.
I mean, when you have a guy like Cam Newton, you've got to play him. It doesn't matter about quarterback controversy. I think that was a little bit of a.
I feel it was tongue in cheek, but
a little bit tongue in cheek. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he came back and he didn't exactly have the best game, but for me, it was the defense of the Panthers that completely shut down the Saints, and it's kind of highlighting the one weakness that the Saints have, and that is at quarterback.
Well, I mean, I don't think any quarterback's going to have a good game how many sacks did Carolina get in that game? I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe? How many total sacks?
2, 4, 6 sacks in total. So, he was getting through that line, and which is a really good offensive line usually, by the way. I would have to say it's probably the best offensive line in the league that the Saints have.
Not only is that crazy, but that team that has probably the best running game in the entire league too got held to no rushing touchdowns. So that's just masterful.
Yeah,
defense,
holding to Foster to 81 yards as well, considering he's been averaging well over 100 every game, pretty much is a fantastic achievement for the Panthers.
This reminds me of if you've people who are Madden fans, sometimes in your franchise mode you would have what my friends and I call a can't win game when you're already you're on a 10-game win streak and you're playing a team that you're like, oh man, I might go undefeated, and somehow like nothing works in that game. Sacks come out of nowhere. Anything you throw is an interception. You manage to drive your way all the way back to the end zone, and then you fumble on the 1-yard line. It's just like the AI will let you do nothing to win that game. And this, not to take away from Carolina, almost feels that way because the 6 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. Like, you are not going to win that game. Like it's not happening.
No, but it's really interesting now because it's going to make the second game when that happens really, really interesting because that could mean that the Saints end up as a wild card, which is just crazy if the Panthers obviously manage to keep up this form that they're in.
And I love that that's kind of what's shaping this season is kind of shaping up for once. It was, just 1 or 2 teams just absolutely dominated the entire league. But it looks like this season is going to shape up to be just division rival, like tough division battles. And that's awesome. Like that's a league that has parity, and that's great.
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about, there's only 3 teams that haven't won a game this year, but I think every single division at least has 2 teams that are competing with each other at this stage. Some of them, I think 3 or 4 of them probably have 3 teams that are, you could toss up and say this could go either way over the remaining, 11 or so games to go in the league.
Yep.
But it's great to see that, teams are, the competitive balance is back now after last year where we had 2 unbeaten teams, and we probably won't see an unbeaten team this year. So that's great to see. Really, it shows sort of 2 things. One, that teams are thinking about it and thinking about how they play against each other. People are developing more. And who knows how this season plays out. I mean, we're only 5 games in, so it's great to see.
Yeah, a lot more football to be played.
Yeah, absolutely. So shall we come back then and just look at the Kansas City Chiefs, because we talked about them earlier. They're 4-1, which is fantastic. We said given the injuries they've had, and this team last year was really good, and then they kind of faded away towards the end of the season. But I want to talk about this man, Mr. Pat Devlin, who is leading the league in total yards, and he's performing pretty well so far. We've talked about him before, whether he is good enough to be a starter at one point. He's now definitely is a comfortable starter in this league. But do you think he's good enough to take Kansas to that next level now?
I think that he's a great quarterback, and as he continues to put more around him, I think that especially with that clutch QB that he just picked up. I think that the sky's the limit for Pat Devlin. I love his the fact that he has a super strong arm. You'd like to see him get a little bit smarter. He's 25, so he's got a lot of time to boost that intelligence. So if I was training him, I'd probably do an emphasis on intelligence. I mean, because if you can get that, 73 is just really low for a starting quarterback, I think. But I also think that having that clutch tag probably mitigates that. Probably keeps him from throwing really dumb picks because he's clutch. So that's definitely worked out in his favor. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in Week 7 with the Chiefs. That's the measuring stick I'm waiting for because they're another team that's benefited from a pretty good schedule. And the one time Mr. Devlin saw a legit defense, he got held to 10 points.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is true. The Jaguars obviously was the game there. I mean, they got a good win against the Colts, who offensively look pretty good again this year. Although they faded away past couple of games, probably fair to say. But yeah, they've got an interesting end of season schedule. I mean, you've got the Broncos, the Browns, the Packers, the Jets in there, the Broncos again, and then obviously yourselves. So probably that last 6 weeks is what's going to make or break this team this year. And obviously the injuries, if they can get some of the fatigue players back, probably because they kind of need them at this point. It'd be interesting to see how it plays out. But yeah, Pat Devlin, I have to say, whatever the white cornerback's doing as GM there to get him playing, massive props because I mean the guy was taken. What was it? Is it 6th or 7th round? I think it was originally. So fantastic, fantastic value.
He's completing 62% of his passes. Like he's just out there, winging it. So good for him.
Yeah, and it shows you if you get the right strategy in place for a quarterback, you can really, make up for some of the flaws that they might have in their game and develop on the strengths that they have. So, Chiefs are 4-1, Broncos are 4-1. I mean, I don't know about you. I don't think the Chiefs will win that division, but I could see them as comfortable wild card team in the American Conference.
Yeah, same here. I think a lot of it's going to come down to quirk of the schedule. This is 2 years in a row he's played. He's got the Broncos to end the season, and as we know, the Broncos are, if they're going into the end of the season and they have a playoff spot locked up, he's going to rest his players. So that might help him out again if it comes down into the margins at the end of the year. But he's another one of those teams like kind of similar to the Jaguars, has a second half run after their bye week. That's just rough. The Titans, then the Broncos, then the Jets, then the Packers, then the Browns, then the Broncos. And, in between there are the Vikings who seem like they're having a better season this year too. So that's second half of the season. I want to say from week 10 to week 17 across the league it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to finish with one other team, if that's okay. So the National South, I just want to give a shout out to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have had some atrocious seasons. They're probably one of the weakest teams when we started the league historically. But, 3-1 now, and some good wins against the Falcons, the 49ers, and the Seattle Seahawks to get those 3 wins. They're looking like they're in great shape this year. 3-1, I mean, they probably won't make the playoffs because of how tough their division is. But, I mean, that's definitely progress that they're making there. And it's great to see. I mean, they're middle of the pack pretty much on offense and defense. But 3-1 is, huge improvement from the last couple of seasons.
Well, whatever they're doing over there with Josh Freeman, it seems like it's finally clicked for him this year. He's another guy that's completing an absurd amount of his passes, and 65% of his passes or something like that.
Yeah, his ratings improved, and again, you can probably point to his actual line getting better because he's only had 2 sacks this year.
Yep, so, same thing I was getting ready to say, man. Good eye.
Yeah. Shows that if you can have the best quarterback in the world in this game, but if you don't have a line to protect him, he can't do anything with it. So yeah, props to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers GM, Flaming Homer, and fantastic to see that they're actually making some good progress this year. So to just finish off on then, we've talked about a couple of teams, talked about one player. I just want to get your 3 way too early season predictions this year based on 5 games. What 3 have you got that are way too early that you think will happen over the next couple of weeks?
Let me see. Three strong predictions. I think when it's all said and done, the American and National Leagues will be led by the Packers and the Broncos. I think that the wild card this year for the American League will be just as bad as last year. I think it'll be 11 wins.
Mm-hmm.
Just doing the rough math in my head.
Yeah.
And I think the Panthers, I'm going to crazy prediction here. The Panthers not only make the playoffs, but they win a first round game.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's an interesting three. I'll give you my three. So I reckon that the Seattle Seahawks will be 0.500 at 0-5.
Okay.
We saw them last year. They were in a similar situation. They then won, I think it was 8 on the bounce to pull back to 500. Yep. They're historically slow starters in the league. That's my first one. My second one is I think the Cowboys will take the National East at 1-4. Again, I think that the team's historically slowing starting. I think they'll end up probably 10-6, which will probably be enough to take that division this year. Historically, that's always been a division that has struggled in terms of the top team actually winning more than 10-11 games. So I think they could come back. So two bold predictions there. If I get 1 out of 2 on that, I'll be amazed. But that's my two immediate ones. And my final one is that I'm probably going to say that the Packers take the National Conference this year and go to the Super Bowl. I don't know if they'll win the Super Bowl. It's just a toss up then at that point. But I just think that they are definitely showing signs of being the strongest team in the National Conference this year. Better than the Saints, more balance, good on both sides of the ball, and I think it could finally be their year they get to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think that I think they might be the most balanced team in the entire league, and that's why I picked them for the American as well. And the reason I picked the Broncos is I think that I think Noah's just an incredibly good regular season GM. I think that he'll be challenged more in the playoffs this year, but I just think that he can navigate that schedule with his ability to game plan.
Yeah. But 5 games in, still loads to play for. But those are quick hits and quick discussion points so far. We'll probably come back after several games and maybe we'll do our historic. I say historic. We've only been playing 3 or 4 seasons, but our historic. Look back in terms of buy and sell. I think we'll have a look at that in a few weeks' time. It's the halfway mark.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, we'll come back and do a bit more of a deeper discussion then. But Josh, it's been great to have you on. Best of luck with the next couple of games.
Appreciate it.
Going to be tough competition for you, I think, this year with the Jaguars who've made a strong start. But
same as it was last year.
It's always good to have a team that's competing against you, though. You wouldn't want to be in a division where it's an easy win. It's nice to be challenged in the season. So I'm interested to see that fight, actually, how that goes when you two play each other. That's going to be a fantastic matchup.
Yeah, well, he won the last one. He got the division. So, good for him on that. And I'm, hoping that I can bring it closer together when we finally have a game where we match up against each other. But I don't want to look ahead of the Colts. I got to beat the Colts because they dropped 40 on me. So
they did, yeah. They completely smashed you. So that was an interesting loss. But who knows? Maybe the Colts will be back up and challenging, and it could be a 3-way battle for your division this year. But going to be interesting to see. And we'll come back and see the latest developing headlines over the next couple of weeks.
Yep.